I was 13 when my parents disappeared, abandoning me with only a note and a deserted home. My rich uncle took me in and passed down all he knew. 15 years later, destiny brought us together again, but now everything had changed. There are moments in life when you're soaring, absolutely on top of the world, and then there's the chill of a memory that reminds you how brutally you were dropped. My 32nd birthday wasn't just a celebration, it was a stark, almost cruel, reminder of the day my entire world shattered, a day that, shockingly, would come full circle against the very people who broke it. I was sitting in my penthouse office, glass walls, the whole Monterey Bay glittering like a jewel beneath me, the city a bustling ant farm at my feet. My name is Elijah Mountain, 32, chairman of this massive construction empire I inherited. On paper, I was the definition of success. But on this particular day, my birthday, that success felt like a paper-thin mask, barely covering a hollow, crushing loneliness inside me. Because this wasn't just any birthday. It was a brutal echo of the day I was abandoned like a discarded toy. My gaze fell on a tiny, solitary birthday card on my huge, mahogany desk, surrounded by contracts and reports. It was from Ella, my assistant. She's always so thoughtful with the little things. Happy birthday, boss. Wishing you a new year full of success and joy. Her handwriting was neat, with this sweet, whimsical birthday cake drawing. I picked it up, a faint, almost ghost of a smile touching my lips. But just like that, a chilling wind, an icy blast from the past, swept right through me, gripping my heart so tight it hurt. This card, as warm as its intention was, just pulled me back. Back to my 13th birthday. The day everything changed forever. I closed my eyes, and the memories just flooded back, like a dam bursting inside my head. I could practically smell it, that damp, musty wood of our tiny house in Eureka, Northern California, where summer was always this strange, humid fog. I was just a kid then, 13, all gangly limbs and messy brown hair, but my eyes, they were still brimming with hope. School had let out early that day, and I remember running all the way home, my heart practically exploding with excitement. It was my birthday, right? I pictured them, Mom and Dad, waiting for me. Maybe a homemade chocolate cake, Mom's favorite. Gifts wrapped in bright, crinkly paper. My dad, Daniel, he'd probably pat my shoulder, say, "Son, you're growing up." And Mom, Ruth, she'd hug me so tight, singing happy birthday. That's all I dreamed about. I walked home with my heavy backpack and worn-out shoes down that red dirt trail, pine trees towering around me, birds singing like a soundtrack to my pure joy. Eureka was tiny, you know? Everyone knew everyone. Our wooden house was on the outskirts. Nothing fancy, just a simple place with a hastily tiled roof and a weedy backyard. But to me, it was my entire world. I pushed the door open, breathless, grinning ear to ear. "Dad! Mom! I'm home!" I yelled. Only echoes answered. The house was strangely silent. No smell of cake baking. No laughter. Just the ticking of the wall clock and the afternoon sun filtering through dusty windows. I dropped my backpack, the old wooden floor creaking, and stepped into the kitchen. That's where Mom usually cooked, with our old wooden table and the comforting hum of the fridge. And then I saw it. A small, white note, scribbled hastily with a ballpoint pen, stuck to the fridge door with a heart-shaped magnet. My heart was still racing, a frantic little bird in my chest, hoping, praying this was some elaborate joke, part of a huge birthday surprise. I read it. "Elijah, we're going to a friend's house. We'll be back in a week. Eat carefully. Mom and Dad." That was it. No happy birthday, no we love you, no promises of gifts, nothing. Just that. I stood there, blinking, trying to make sense of it. To a friend's house? I whispered to myself. Which friend? We barely had any close friends nearby. My parents were always working, Dad was a carpenter, Mom at the grocery store, but they'd never gone anywhere without telling me first. I opened the fridge, searching for a cake. Anything. But there was just dry bread, some expired yogurt, and a withered apple. My heart started to sink, heavy, heavy. No, I told myself. They'll be back soon. Maybe it's a surprise trip, and when they return, they'll throw an even bigger party. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the cracked wooden ceiling, unable to sleep. The wind howled through the door cracks, making me shiver. My birthday. 13. I thought I was grown up, but now I felt smaller than ever. The next morning, I woke up, made myself milk with dry bread, and walked to school. I couldn't let anyone know. Eureka was a small town. People talked. I was terrified they'd call the police, send me to an orphanage. Act normal, Elijah, I told myself, forcing smiles at friends, pretending everything was fine. The first few days crawled by, each hour an eternity. Anxiety gnawed at me. Every afternoon, I'd rush home, my breath hitched, hoping to see Dad's old car in the driveway. But there was always just the empty yard, the neighbor's dog barking. I'd wash my clothes in a cold basin, hang them outside, then sit studying under a dim yellow lamp, the light on my books, but my mind screaming questions. Where were they? Why no call? We had a landline, but it stayed silent. I even tried calling some acquaintances, but no one knew about any friend's house. By the third day, real fear started to set in. The dry bread was gone. I rummaged through the kitchen cabinets, finding a few cans of cold beans, some moldy crackers. My stomach growled, a hollow ache, but I choked it down. At night, I'd curl under the blanket, listening to every little sound, rustling leaves, distant cars. They'll come back, I'd whisper, tears streaming down my face. I remembered Mom's warm voice telling bedtime stories, Dad teaching me wood carving. Now they were just faded memories. On the fourth day, I was exhausted at school. My teacher asked why I looked so pale. Just a slight cold, ma'am, I forced a smile, hiding the terror of being discovered, the crushing loneliness. Coming home, I'd sit by the window, staring at the darkening road, waiting for a car. Every time headlights flashed, my heart leaped. It's them. But the car would pass, leaving only darkness. I started imagining the worst. An accident? Or maybe they just forgot about me. The thought made me tremble. The fifth day, I ran out of food completely. I had to walk to the grocery store, using the few coins left in my pocket for bread and milk. The owner looked at me oddly. Where are your parents? They're busy, sir, I stammered. Back home, I ate quickly, then sat studying, but my mind just drifted. I wrote in an old notebook, it's been 5 days since my birthday. No one remembers. I'm so lonely. Tears fell on the page, blurring the ink. On the 6th day, utter despair began to creep in. No more excitement, just sheer terror. I'd wander through the house, touching their things. Dad's jacket still on the hook, Mom's scarf faintly scented with her perfume. Why? I screamed in my head. I tried calling an aunt far away, but no one answered. That night was a nightmare. I was abandoned in a forest, calling for them, but no one came. And then the 7th day. I woke up with one last desperate hope. They said they'd be back in a week. I counted the hours. I even cleaned the house, hoping they'd be surprised. But the sun set, darkness fell, and no car. I sat by the fridge, staring at that note again. The hasty writing, no punctuation, as if they were in such a rush, they didn't want to stay another second. And that's when the truth hit me. Not like a gentle whisper, but a physical slap to the face. They weren't on a trip. They weren't coming back. They had abandoned me. That note wasn't a promise, it was their coward's way out, their gentle vanishing act from a child's life. I collapsed onto the cold kitchen floor, tears pouring out, uncontrollably. My heart ached like it was being torn apart, limb from limb. Why? What did I do wrong? I sobbed, my cries echoing in that vast, empty house. I was just a 13-year-old boy, left with this enormous, crushing loneliness. My birthday wasn't the start of joy. It was the beginning of hell. I didn't know what the future held. Only that, from now on, I had to face the world alone. The days that followed were a hazy, starving fog. My stomach growled constantly, like a wild animal clawing from inside me. I drank tap water, hoping to fill the void, but it only made me dizzier. My body weakened. My legs trembled. My mind swirled with blurry images of family meals. By the 10th day, or maybe it was the 11th, or 12th, I don't even know anymore, time had blurred into a horrifying haze. I was lying on the floor, staring at that cracked ceiling, feeling the entire world just collapsing. What do I do now? I whispered, my voice raw from crying. I thought about calling the police, but the fear of an orphanage in Eureka, people gossiped about those places. Cold. Full of abandoned kids. No one truly cared. I didn't want to be part of that world. Just go out, I told myself. Find some food. Maybe someone will help. But even that thought was terrifying. Going out meant admitting I was alone, facing the curious stares of neighbors. Hunger finally won. One morning, thick with that familiar Eureka fog, the sun barely peeking through the gray, I decided. I had to leave. I put on Dad's old jacket, way too big for my skinny frame, and stuffed my last few coins into my pocket. The door creaked open, and the cold sea wind rushed in, carrying that salty, bitter scent. The red dirt road to town stretched endlessly before me, each step heavy, weighted with lead. I walked slowly, avoiding puddles from the night's rain. My head bowed, my heart pounded. What if someone asks? What will I say? Eureka was a small town, with winding, almost cobblestone-like streets and a few scattered shops. I avoided the center, where the school and cafes were, terrified of running into friends or teachers. Instead, I wandered towards the outskirts, heading for the old bus station. It was on the edge of town, dusty, full of trucks and travelers. A place where people gathered, refueling, grabbing quick bites before moving on. Maybe there, someone would notice me, give me a leftover piece of bread. My stomach twisted. I had to stop, squatting by the roadside to catch my breath. Just a bit of food, I mumbled, tears welling up again. The anxiety built. What if no one helps? What if I'm chased away like a beggar? The bus station finally came into view after nearly an hour of walking. A big lot with an old gas pump, a few fast food stands, buses parked haphazardly. The smell of gasoline mixed with frying food from the diner made my stomach churn violently. I huddled in a corner, watching weary drivers smoking, families buying drinks, hurried passengers boarding. I tried to approach a kind-looking man buying a sandwich, but when he turned, I panicked and backed away. What do I look like? Dirty, starving. They'll think I'm a vagrant. My heart raced. I wandered around, hoping someone would call my name, recognize me as Daniel Mountain's son. But no one even glanced my way. Despair crashed over me again. I slumped onto the concrete steps, burying my head in my knees. Then a silver truck pulled up to the gas pump just a few feet away. The engine shut off. The door opened. A tall man, maybe 50, stepped out. Brown leather jacket, salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. Benjamin Mountain. My uncle. I didn't know it then. He was just a stranger. He was on his way from Portland to San Francisco, a long business trip. He'd stopped to refuel and stretch his legs. As he approached the pump, his gaze accidentally swept over me. This skinny boy, huddled there, dirty, but with a strangely familiar face. He paused, frowning, as if trying to recall something from a distant past. My heart skipped a beat as he started to approach. Run, Elijah! I thought, but my body was too weak to move. He stopped in front of me, his voice deep and warm, full of genuine concern. "Hey, kid. What are you doing here alone? What's your name?" I looked up, my eyes red and swollen, meeting his gaze. There was something about him that didn't scare me. Maybe the gentle smile, or the way he crouched down to my eye level. "My name is Elijah," I stammered, my voice trembling. "My house is nearby, but I'm looking for food." He nodded, not pushing, but pulled a chocolate bar from his pocket and handed it to me. "Eat this. You look starving." I snatched it, devouring it greedily, the bittersweet taste spreading through me, making the tears fall again. He sat down beside me, unhurried. "Where's your home? Where are your parents?" he asked gently. I hesitated, but then everything just poured out like a river bursting its banks. I told him about my birthday, the note. The days alone. When I mentioned my last name, Mountain, and that my dad's name was Daniel, he froze. His face went pale. "Daniel, my brother," he muttered, his eyes widening in shock. I didn't understand then, but I learned later. Benjamin was Dad's younger brother. They'd cut off contact years ago over a dispute about our grandfather's inheritance, a big piece of land in California. My dad had fought bitterly over it, creating this deep resentment. Benjamin had never met me, but he recognized the face, my eyes, identical to my dad's. Mountain, a rare surname in that area. "Take me to your house," he said, his voice firm, but filled with worry. I nodded. On the way back, he asked more about my life, and I told him everything, tears streaming. When we arrived, he stepped into the empty house, looked around, and saw the note still on the table. He read it, his face darkening. "They left you," he whispered, his voice thick with rage. He turned to me, hugging my shoulders tightly. The first embrace after so many lonely, terrifying days. "It's not your fault, Elijah. I'll take you with me." At that moment, I didn't know how to react. Go with a stranger? But he wasn't a stranger. He was my uncle, and in his eyes, I saw sincerity. He quickly explained the strained family history. "Your dad and I had a big fight over land. Haven't spoken in years, but you're innocent, and I can't leave you here alone." He called the local police, reported my parents, but wouldn't let them take me. He convinced them he was family, that he would care for me. Then he packed a few of my things, clothes, books, an old family photo, and we got into his truck. The drive from Eureka to Carmel by the Sea lasted hours, but to me it was like a dream. He stopped to buy food, hot sandwiches, fresh milk, fruit. I devoured it in the truck. He told me about his life. He owned a small construction company called Mountain Construction Group. Lived in an old stone house by the sea in Carmel. "It's a peaceful place. You'll like it," he said, his voice warm. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the scenery pass. The pine forest giving way to rugged coastlines, waves crashing white. The fear gradually faded, replaced by a fragile hope. When we arrived in Carmel, the sun had set. The old stone house appeared under the dim streetlights, a sturdy building with gray stone walls, a red-tiled roof, a garden full of wildflowers. Inside, it was cozy with a crackling fireplace and the faint scent of pine wood. He led me to my own room, small but clean, with a soft bed and books on the shelves. "From now on, this is your home," he said, patting my shoulder. That was the first time I felt truly safe after those hellish days. Those early years with my uncle in Carmel, wow, they were a time of slow, often painful adaptation to a completely new life. A life of discipline and order, so utterly different from the chaos I'd known. His old stone house, right by the seaside, felt like a fortress. Every morning, he'd wake at dawn, brewing strong black coffee in an old pot, his deep, warm voice calling me up, "Elijah, a new day has begun. Don't let time slip away." This skinny, bewildered 13-year-old, was initially groggy, confused, but slowly I got used to his rhythm. We'd have breakfast together, usually toast, eggs, fresh fruit from the local market, and he'd always remind me, eating is to live, not living to eat. Be grateful for what you have. He taught me discipline through the smallest things. He gave me an old, leather-bound notebook. From now on, he said, you'll track every expense in this, even a penny for candy. Write it down. I remember that first evening, sitting at the wooden table under a dim yellow light, my uncle beside me, patiently guiding me. Today, you bought milk, $2. You bought school supplies, $5. Total? I calculated clumsily, but he patiently explained. Money doesn't grow on trees, Elijah. It comes from labor, and labor is the foundation of self-respect. When you learn to manage money, you'll learn to manage your life. These weren't just theories. He applied them daily. We'd go to the market, choosing cheap but fresh vegetables, and he'd teach me how to bargain politely. Saving isn't stinginess, he'd say, his eyes twinkling. It's respecting your own sweat. From that day on, my life transformed. Uncle Benjamin didn't give me luxuries, but real, profound love through simple, solid things. He taught me to cook, to repair things, to manage my time. Every evening, we'd sit by the fireplace, and he'd tell stories about the Mountain family, about the construction projects he'd done. True strength doesn't come from money, Elijah, he'd often say, his voice calm. It comes from maintaining your character when no one's around. You've done that these past days. You're stronger than you think. For me, that was the first time I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. Uncle Benjamin wasn't my parents, but he was the one who saved me from the darkness. I grew up quickly under his love and discipline. At the local school, a small seaside institution with classrooms overlooking the ocean, I began to stand out. At first, I was shy, afraid of friends asking about my past, but gradually I excelled in my studies. My classmates liked me. Teachers praised me. Elijah is the most mature boy in class, they'd say. Uncle Benjamin was so proud. Every weekend, he'd take me to the office of Mountain Construction Group, a simple wooden building smelling of concrete and fresh wood, and show me off to the staff. This is my nephew, the future of the company. I'd blush, but my heart warmed. That was the first time I felt real recognition, not from blood ties, but from my own effort. But not everything was smooth. In that house there was also David, my uncle's biological son. A few years older than me, tall, broad, with blonde hair and a smile that could charm anyone. But his eyes? They were always cold when he looked at me. At first, it wasn't open hatred, just these long stares, sarcastic remarks. Dad, why'd you bring home some random kid? He once asked my uncle when I first arrived, whispering, but loud enough for me to hear from the next room. Uncle Benjamin tried to explain, this is Elijah, my real nephew, your cousin. He needs us. But David just wouldn't accept it. He grew up spoiled, my uncle later told me. David's mother died young, and Uncle Benjamin had compensated by giving him everything. Now, the attention my uncle gave me made David feel threatened. The jealousy festered over the years. As I became an outstanding student, David grew increasingly distant. At school, he was the popular guy, surrounded by friends. But his grades were mediocre. Every time I brought home an excellent report card, Uncle Benjamin would smile proudly. Elijah, you've done great. David would sit at the corner of the table, his face darkening, muttering sarcastically, oh, the picked-up kid is so talented, huh? Dad forgot his own son. My heart would tighten each time, but I'd stay silent, not wanting to upset my uncle. My uncle tried to mediate. David, you can do it, too, if you try. But David just smirked and dove into his own world, partying with friends on the beach, borrowing my uncle's car for night outings. I'd hear the car return late, smell the faint alcohol, and see my uncle shake his head sadly. Tension began to creep into our peaceful life. I could feel it in the air. Silent dinners where David would eat quickly and leave, abandoning my uncle and me. Why does he hate me? I once asked my uncle one night by the fireplace. He sighed. He's afraid of losing his dad, Elijah. But I love you both. I nodded, but deep down I worried. Would David do something to drive me away? Those nights I'd lie awake, listening to the waves crashing, wondering if this fragile happiness would last. Time passed. The year I turned 18, I graduated valedictorian with a university scholarship. But I chose to stay in Carmel, studying construction management online while working for my uncle. David, after graduating late, was forced by my uncle to work at Mountain Construction Group, too. Both of you work to learn, my uncle said, hoping it would bring us closer. I started from the bottom, a site assistant, humble and diligent. Every day I'd wake early, put on my protective gear, and dive into work, measuring blueprints, supervising workers, learning to calculate costs. You're doing well, my uncle praised. And the staff liked me for my enthusiasm. I quickly proved my ability. On one small seaside bridge project, I suggested a way to save materials while keeping it durable, and my uncle nodded in approval. David was the opposite. He'd arrive late, dressed in a neat suit, but do nothing except sit in the office, scrolling on his phone. He sank deeper into partying, spending extravagantly, new cars, designer clothes, weekend getaways with girlfriends. I'm the boss's son. Why get dirty like the picked-up kid? He'd smirk when he saw me filthy from the site. Uncle Benjamin warned him many times. David, labor is the foundation. Don't disappoint me. But each warning only made David more resentful. He'd whisper to the staff that Elijah is just good at buttering up Dad. He's taking all the affection I deserve. I'd overhear those words vaguely, my heart aching, but I'd stay silent, focusing on my work. The tension grew. Would David do something extreme? Once, he deliberately messed up a blueprint I'd assigned, causing delays, and my uncle had to intervene. Those years passed in a fragile balance. The company grew thanks to my efforts and my uncle's guidance. But David's shadow loomed larger. I remember one stormy evening when David came home drunk, slamming the door, yelling, "Dad, why are you letting that kid manage everything? I'm your real son." My uncle stayed silent, but I saw him tremble. My heart raced, the suspense building. Would this family break apart? I didn't know. Only that I had to be strong for my uncle and for myself. Then, everything shifted. One chilly autumn afternoon, Uncle Benjamin came home from the hospital, his face weary, eyes sunken, his breathing labored. He sat in his armchair by the fireplace, clutching a diagnosis paper. "Elijah," he said, his voice calm but with a tremor I couldn't ignore, "I have chronic pulmonary fibrosis. A vicious disease." His lungs were slowly, agonizingly, stiffening, turning every breath into a battle. The doctor said it progressed slowly, but for my uncle, who'd worked tirelessly his whole life, it was like a silent storm. He weakened day by day, from initial dry coughs to needing oxygen through clear plastic tubes. He stayed home, no longer going to the Mountain Construction Group office, just sitting by the window, gazing at the sea where the waves lapped steadily, like his fading heartbeat. I looked at him, my heart tightening. He had once been such a strong, tall man, with calloused hands from construction sites. Now he was gone, his skin pale, every step accompanied by wheezing breaths. "Don't worry, Uncle. I'll take care of you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. From that day on, I put work aside to be by his side. I noted his medication schedule, those small but crucial pills, from antibiotics to pain relievers, and reminded him to take them on time. I took him to physical therapy at the local hospital, driving slowly along the winding coastal roads, the salty sea breeze blowing through the windows. He'd sit in the passenger seat, oxygen tube around his nose, and we'd talk about old memories, the day he found me at the Eureka bus station, the company's first projects. Those trips were filled with an agonizing suspense. Would he suddenly tire? Would a coughing fit strike? I always kept a spare oxygen tank ready, my heart racing every time he gasped for breath. Late at night, when he finally slept, I'd breathe a sigh of relief. But then the worry would creep back in. How would he be in the morning? Life became a string of suspenseful days where each of his breaths was a stark reminder of life's fragility. David, my cousin, he visited. Sometimes. But each time, it was with this palpable impatience. He'd drive up in his flashy sports car, park in the yard, step inside in his neat suit, but his eyes always darted to his watch. "Dad, I'm here to visit," he'd say in this fake, hollow tone, sitting for barely 10 minutes before standing up. "I'm busy in the city. See you next time." Uncle Benjamin would look at him sadly. "Stay for dinner, David." But David always refused, citing work parties. I'd stand in the kitchen, hearing it all, my heart aching. Did he even realize Uncle was weakening day by day? Or was he just waiting for something else? Every time he saw me caring for Uncle, David would drop sarcastic remarks like needles piercing the quiet air. Once, while I was helping Uncle put on his oxygen tube, David walked in and smirked. "Oh, the picked-up kid playing the dutiful son again. No matter how hard you try, you're just a side character in this family." I paused, my heart pounding, but didn't respond. He continued, his voice louder. "The real heir is always the biological son, not someone picked up from a bus station." Those words cut like knives, stirring up the raw memories of Eureka. But I chose silence. I knew Uncle needed peace more than pointless arguments. "David, that's enough," Uncle said weakly. But David just shrugged and left, leaving a heavy, toxic atmosphere. I turned back to Uncle, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Don't mind him, Uncle." But deep down, suspense surged. Would David's hatred explode? Would he do something to push me out of the picture for good? Winter arrived, bringing cold winds from the sea and a thick fog that enveloped Carmel. One early winter morning, I woke up as usual, brewed coffee, and stepped into Uncle's room. He lay there, peaceful in his sleep. But when I called, he didn't respond. My heart skipped a beat. I approached and touched his hand. Cold. "Uncle!" I screamed, my voice breaking. He had passed in his sleep, leaving a vast emptiness in the quiet house. I collapsed by the bed, tears streaming, memories flooding like a torrent. The day he saved me, his lessons by the fireplace, his proud smile at my successes. The house was silent now, only the distant waves crashing like a final farewell. I called the doctor, called David, my voice trembling. "Brother." "David." "Uncle, he's gone." He was silent for a moment, then said, "I'm coming right away." The pain tore at my heart, but I had to be strong. Arrange the funeral. Notify the staff. The funeral took place by the seaside under a gray sky, where we scattered his ashes to the wind, as he had instructed. Let me return to the sea. Then came the day of the will reading in the small lawyer's office in central Carmel, with dark wooden walls and a heavy, suffocating atmosphere. I sat there next to David. He was in a black suit, his face cold, but I sensed his tension. The lawyer, an old man with glasses, opened the yellowed folder. According to Benjamin Mountain's will, all assets, shares in Mountain Construction Group and real estate, will go to Elijah Mountain. The air froze. I was stunned. My heart raced. All of it? I'd never even thought about that. David gave this incredulous smile, as if waiting for a punchline, but then his face flushed red, anger spreading across it. He jumped up, slamming the table with a loud crack, snatching the will from the lawyer's hands. "What the hell is this? This is forgery," he yelled, his voice shrill, face twisted. That Elijah manipulated Dad when he was sick. He was by Dad's side the whole time, forcing him to sign this. I sat still, not reacting, but my heart ached. Those accusations were like stabbing knives. The lawyer tried to intervene. The will was made 2 years ago, when Mr. Benjamin was healthy, and it's notarized. But David didn't listen. He threw a glass, shattering it on the floor, threatening to sue the whole company. "I won't let you steal everything. I'm the real son." Chaos ensued. People tried to hold him back, but David shoved them away. His eyes, bloodshot, glared at me. I still sat silent, the quiet between us becoming suffocating. That was the moment everything shifted. From now on, I was no longer the rescued child, but the one bearing an entire legacy, and with it, the curse of the Mountain family. After that reading, David stormed out of the lawyer's office in a rage. His face was flushed red, like it was on fire. He didn't glance at me, not even once, just bolted for the door, his hard-soled shoes pounding loudly on the wooden floor. I faintly heard him muttering, "He stole everything from me." Everything. From then on, David vanished from Mountain Construction Group. He sent a curt resignation email, no explanation, and cut off all contact with me. But I knew, deep in his heart, hatred was boiling. David believed I had stolen everything that was rightfully his, the company, the house, Uncle Benjamin's legacy. To him, I wasn't a brother or even a nephew. I was just an outsider, someone who had manipulated his way to seize it all. I sat alone in the Carmel office, gazing at the gray sea, my heart heavy. This unsettling suspense began to creep in. What would he do? I tried to push the thought away, focusing on taking over the company, but deep down, I sensed a shadow enveloping everything. The first few weeks after Uncle Benjamin's funeral were truly difficult. I had to stabilize the company, meet with employees, sign new contracts, and handle a mountain of documents. Everyone at Mountain Construction looked at me with respect, but also worry. "Boss Elijah, where's David?" I'd just smile faintly. "He needs some time." But in reality, I had no idea where David was. He'd moved to Los Angeles, renting a luxurious apartment with the little savings he had left. And there, he began plotting. I knew nothing at first. Everything happened in the shadows, like a brewing storm. David, fueled by burning jealousy, started contacting our competitors, big construction firms on the West Coast, always eager to swallow up Mountain Construction. He'd meet them in dimly lit bars, whispering exchanges of secret project information he'd accessed while still working for us. "Elijah is laundering money through the company," he'd fabricate, his voice full of venom. "I have proof. Shady expenses, international transfers." Those lies spread like poison, making some partners hesitate to collaborate with us. I noticed the first sign when a major project, building a seaside residential area in Monterey, had its information leaked. We were preparing to bid with a detailed plan known only to a few. Suddenly, our main competitors submitted an identical proposal with slightly lower costs. How did they? I wondered, sitting in the office, my hands trembling as I held the report. Employees whispered, "Maybe it's a coincidence." But I felt something was terribly wrong. Suspense grew. Someone was betraying us. I strengthened security, changed system passwords, but it was too late. David had gone further. He used his remaining money to hire hackers, those lurking in the dark web, specializing in dirty work. They breached the company's system through a small vulnerability, stealing vital files, internal emails, and anonymously sending them to the local press. The next morning, I opened the newspaper. My heart skipped a beat. The headline blared, "Mountain Construction suspected of money laundering. Internal info leaked." The article quoted project details along with accusations that I was hiding illegal transactions. The phone rang off the hook. Partners calling to question, employees panicking, and the company's stock plummeting. I slumped into my chair, my mind reeling. Who did this? I muttered, clenching the newspaper. The pain from Uncle Benjamin's death still lingered, now compounded by the fear of losing everything. I hired cybersecurity experts to check, and they confirmed it. The system was hacked remotely, with traces leading to an IP address in Los Angeles. My heart pounded. David. But I didn't dare believe it. Meanwhile, David smirked in his apartment, watching the news on TV. He'll collapse, he thought, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. But the plan wasn't enough. When he saw my company still holding firm, thanks to me publicly transparentizing the books, proving all accusations false, David went mad. It's not over yet, he muttered, moving to the next step, hiring people to stalk me. From then on, my life became a series of dramatically suspenseful days. I could feel it. Strange cars parked outside the office, shadows following me as I drove home. One evening, driving on the winding coastal road in Carmel, the strong sea wind blowing through the window, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a black car tailing me closely. My heart pounded. Who are they? I sped up, but the black car did too. Then, suddenly, it surged forward, forcing my car toward the cliff. The screech of metal colliding pierced the air. My car flipped sideways, rolling several times down the slope. I woke up in the hospital, my head throbbing, my body bruised, but luckily only minor injuries, broken ribs, a few cuts. The doctor said, "You nearly died." I lay there, staring at the white ceiling, tears streaming. Why? Who wants to kill me? The police got involved immediately, investigating the accident. They found the offending car abandoned nearby and traced the license plate. It belonged to a small transport company in Los Angeles, secretly registered under David's name through a shell company. The shock hit me like a lightning bolt. I sat in the hospital room holding the police report, my hands shaking. David. My cousin. The boy who grew up under the same roof. He had staged an accident to kill me. My heart ached, not from fear, but from a profound sadness. Why such hatred? I whispered. The investigation expanded quickly, revealing a series of illegal transactions. David had bribed officials for information, illegally transferred money to hackers and stalkers, all to serve his revenge plot. The police raided his house in Los Angeles, a lavish apartment with expensive furnishings, and arrested him on the spot. David struggled, yelling, "I'm innocent. It's Elijah's fault." But the evidence piled up. Emails, bank transfers, and confessions from the arrested hacker. The trial took place in a Los Angeles courtroom under glaring neon lights and a tense atmosphere. I flew there, sitting in the audience row, not out of resentment, just silently observing. David appeared in prisoner garb, his face gaunt, his eyes avoiding mine. The prosecutor presented the evidence, from selling information to hiring hackers, then the accident, all proving attempted murder, intentional injury, and violations of corporate finance laws. David tried to defend himself. I was robbed of my inheritance. Elijah manipulated my dad. But the judge shook his head. That's no excuse for crime. The sentence was pronounced. 20 years in prison. David collapsed, sobbing. But I just quietly left without a word. My heart was heavy. He had once been my brother, even if not by blood, but now just a ghost of hatred. After the trial, I returned to Carmel, holding a press conference to reveal the full truth. Mountain Construction is clean, I said, my voice steady, presenting transparent evidence. The company's reputation was cleared, partners returned, and projects continued. The story closed with the one harboring jealousy, paying the price for his own hatred. David sitting in prison, reflecting on his mistakes, and I, for the first time, lived truly free from the shadows of the past. The Carmel Sea still crashed its waves, and I stood there feeling the sea breeze carry away all burdens. But freedom, no matter how sweet, was just a lull before a new storm. After David's trial, I officially took over Mountain Construction Group as chairman. The position Uncle Benjamin had trusted me to inherit. The Carmel office now became my center, with glass walls overlooking the deep blue sea, where the waves lapped steadily like my now stabilized heartbeat. I began restructuring the organization immediately, not out of ambition, but to honor Uncle's legacy. The company, once shaken by David's accusations, now needed a fresh push. I fired a few dishonest employees, those David had bribed, and hired young, passionate engineers. We expanded into green infrastructure, building structures using solar energy, rainwater recycling systems, and eco-friendly urban areas. "We're not just building houses," I said in the first meeting, my voice warm but firm, but also constructing a sustainable future for the next generations. The first months were so busy, I forgot to eat. Every morning, I'd wake at dawn, brew strong black coffee like Uncle used to, and sit at the old wooden table where he often told stories. I'd review financial reports, negotiate with suppliers, lead the team. My personal life changed, too. I bought a small house by the sea, not far from the company, with a garden full of wildflowers and the soothing sound of waves. I started jogging every morning, feeling the salty sea breeze on my skin like it was chasing away old memories. Friends, close colleagues invited me out, but I'd often decline, choosing to be alone to think. "Elijah, you need to live for yourself," Ella, my assistant, once said. She was the only one who knew the whole story, and sometimes we'd sit drinking coffee, sharing about the past. A year passed in a flash. That summer, the government announced a project to build an eco-urban area along the Monterey coast. A massive contract, the largest in the company's history. It was for a green city with thousands of eco-friendly apartments, parks, schools, and sustainable transportation systems. The contract value reached billions of dollars, potentially deciding mountain construction's future. Win, and we'd expand nationwide. Lose, and we'd have to cut staff. The news spread quickly, and my office was flooded with calls. "This is a golden opportunity," I told the leadership in an emergency meeting, my voice full of excitement, but also worry. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a project. It was a challenge to prove myself after all the upheavals. I personally led the team in the bidding process. We worked tirelessly day and night in the office, with coffee and pizza as companions. I drew designs, calculated costs, met with environmental experts to ensure the green aspect was genuine. Recycled materials, offshore wind energy, advanced water filtration systems. We have to excel. I motivated the team, my eyes sparkling. After many fierce elimination rounds, dozens of major competitors were knocked out, giant companies from New York or Texas with huge budgets, but lacking creativity. Each round was a battle, presenting ideas, answering questions from the state committee, then waiting for results in suspense. I remember the night before the third elimination round. I couldn't sleep, lying there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. What would Uncle Benjamin think if we lose? But we advanced. And finally, only two companies remained, my mountain construction and a firm called Summit Design and Build, an unfamiliar name. But their profile showed strength in high-end construction. When I reviewed the competitor's project profile, sent via email from the committee, I froze as if struck by lightning. I sat in the office, afternoon sunlight streaming through the window onto the screen. In the leadership list, the name Daniel Mountain, my biological father, appeared crystal clear. Founder and chairman. Next to it was Ruth Mountain, my biological mother, as financial director. My heart clenched as if squeezed. A flood of memories rushed back like a torrent. That hastily scribbled note on the fridge door in Eureka. "We're going to a friend's house. We'll be back in a week." The empty wooden house, wind howling through the cracks, and me, a 13-year-old boy, huddled, waiting. The old, rain-soaked bus station where I wandered hungry, hoping someone would recognize me. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from a cold, chilling rage. They, my biological parents, they had abandoned me that year, and now, successful with their own company. They had never once sought me out. No calls, no letters, nothing. Do they even know I'm here? I muttered, my hand clenching the mouse. Summit Design and Build. The name sounded foreign, but now it was like a knife reopening an old wound. I stood up, walked to the balcony, looking out at the glistening Monterey Bay. The sea breeze blew strongly, carrying that salty scent, but it couldn't dispel the storm in my heart. Why now? I asked myself, my heart racing. This project wasn't just bidding. It was a confrontation with a past I thought I'd buried. Daniel and Ruth, once my parents, now competitors. I imagined their faces. Dad with salt and pepper hair. Mom with a fake smile. They had built Summit from nothing after abandoning me. And now they wanted to snatch my opportunity. Rage surged. Have they ever regretted it? But mixed in was this chill. The pain of the abandoned child, now a man, facing them. I knew if I withdrew, I'd avoid the bitter confrontation. Just send an email to the committee. Mountain Construction withdraws. That would be it. No face-to-face. No memories flooding back. No pain. I sat back down, looking at the profile again, my heart pounding as I gripped the mouse. Withdrawing is easy, I thought. But if I do that, I deny everything I've strived to prove. From the abandoned boy in Eureka to the one rescued by Uncle Benjamin, then overcoming David's plot. All to prove I'm worthy. Withdrawing meant admitting the past still controlled me. That I was still afraid. No, I shook my head, tears streaming. I wouldn't let them win without a fight. I decided. I would continue. I called a leadership meeting that very evening in the softly lit conference room with the faint smell of coffee. Mountain Construction will see this through, I said, my voice resolute, though my heart still trembled. Not for fame, but to prove the value of those who know how to build with integrity. Everyone nodded, but I saw worried eyes. Boss, the competitor is strong. I smiled. We're stronger. Because we have heart. From then on, we dove into preparations, refining designs, gathering environmental data, practicing presentations. Each day was a suspenseful battle. Did they know who I was? Would the past repeat itself? I lost sleep many nights, lying there thinking about the upcoming encounter, my heart pounding like a drum. The weeks preparing for the final presentation were the most stressful time in my life. The Mountain Construction Group office in Carmel had become a real battlefield. Papers piled high on desks, computer screens glowing all night, the incessant clacking of keyboards. Every morning I'd wake up early, jogging along the beach to chase away my worries. But the sea breeze only brought that salty, bitter scent, reminding me of the days wandering in Eureka. Who are they to me now? I asked myself, my feet pounding hard on the wet sand. Daniel and Ruth, my biological parents, were now competitors with their powerful Summit design and build. I researched more about them, stealthily, like a thief. They had built Summit in the years after abandoning me, starting with small projects in Southern California, then expanding into an empire. Not a single mention of their son. My heart ached. Have they never looked for me? Every time I reviewed Summit's profile, I'd pause at the names Daniel and Ruth. Memories flooding back, my father's stern face teaching me wood carving, my mother's warm smile telling bedtime stories. Then the note on the fridge door, the empty house, and the enormous loneliness. Why? I whispered into the night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, rage mixed with fear. If I met them, could I stay calm? Would they recognize me? Elijah Mountain, the child they left behind. The day of the final presentation arrived like a storm crashing in. I drove to the state government headquarters in Sacramento, a few hours from Carmel. The coastal highway wound along, the strong sea breeze blowing through the window, carrying the scent of pine forests and ocean. My heart pounded the whole way. Today is the day. I wore a neat black suit, my hair combed, but my hands gripped the steering wheel until they turned white. Stay calm, I whispered. The headquarters was a modern glass building. The California state flag fluttering proudly. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The atmosphere inside was buzzing. Hallways full of people, lively chatter, reporters with cameras at the ready, investors in elegant suits, state officials bustling about. I picked up my attendee badge, my heart pounding. Have they arrived yet? The large conference room was brightly lit with white neon lights, featuring a long U-shaped wooden table and a massive projection screen. The seats were packed, about 100 people, from reporters to experts. Murmurs echoed, the smell of coffee and perfume mingling. I walked in, composed, but my heart heavy. My team sat on one side, nodding encouragement. And then, I saw them. Daniel and Ruth. My biological parents. Sitting directly opposite me, representing Summit Design and Build. My father, now about 60, his hair stark white, his face etched with deep wrinkles. My mother, still elegant, her hair neatly bunched, but her eyes, they averted mine. They didn't look at me right away, whispering to their team. But then, as my company's name was called first, I saw it. My father paused. He looked at me, and his eyes, they widened. Ruth bowed her head, her hands clenching her documents, refusing to meet my gaze. They know. Reporters whispered. 2 companies with the same mountain name. Strange. I sat down, my hands slightly trembling, memories surging like wild waves. The rainy Eureka bus station. Uncle Benjamin saving me. Now facing those who abandoned me. I felt like that 13-year-old boy again, but I pushed it away. I am Elijah Mountain, chairman, I reminded myself. The chairperson, a high-ranking state official, rapped the gavel. The meeting began. Today we'll hear presentations from the 2 final candidates, Mountain Construction Group and Summit Design and Build. A pause. Mountain Construction's name was called first. I stood up, walked to the podium, microphone in front. The lights were blinding, but I stayed calm. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady, somehow. Mountain Construction Group is proud to present the Monterey Eco-Urban Project, a sustainable vision for the future. I presented professionally, each word honed. I spoke about our sustainable strategy. We use 100% solar energy, rainwater recycling systems, and native greenery to reduce carbon. Slides projected transparent charts, data verified by independent experts. I emphasized costs, every expense transparent, no hidden fees, ensuring long-term benefits for the community. The project will create jobs for locals, build free schools and parks, in the true spirit of building not just homes, but lives. That was what Uncle Benjamin had taught me. Build with integrity, Elijah. I spoke with a stirred heart, memories of him flooding back, but I didn't show it. Reporters scribbled furiously. Investors nodded. Daniel and Ruth sat silent. He was staring at me intently. She was still with her head down. Suspense surged. What are they thinking? My part ended amidst applause. I sat down, sweat beading on my forehead. My heart felt lighter, but also, strangely heavy. Then it was Summit Design and Build's turn. Daniel stood, his voice deep, confident. Summit is proud to bring a world-class project. Their presentation was impressive. Flashy slides, stunning 3D images, promising the most luxurious urban area on the West Coast. But I noticed the showiness. Unusually low-cost figures lacking independent verification and focused more on profits than community. We commit to early completion, Ruth added, her voice slightly trembling, still avoiding my gaze. Reporters asked, where's the sustainability data from? They stammered, from internal sources. My heart raced. They're exposing weaknesses. Throughout the meeting, I stayed calm, avoiding any personal emotions. When the committee asked me why I chose sustainability, I looked directly at my father. Because we're building for future generations, I said, not short-term profits. He stared back, something flashing in his eyes. Recognition? Regret? I didn't know. I just focused on maintaining the composure of the man I had become. I faced the past with respect. Respect for myself, not for them. The meeting lasted 2 hours, with relentless questions. The atmosphere was tense to the point of suffocation. Each answer was a battle. Would the committee see the difference? Would reporters dig into the Mountain family connection? Finally, the meeting ended in silence. The chairperson rapped the gavel. Thank you to both sides. Results will be announced later. Sparse applause. Everyone stood. I stepped out of that room, my legs slightly shaky, but my head held high. Reporters swarmed. Mr. Elijah, what's the relationship with Summit? I smiled. Just competitors. But in my heart, I knew this wasn't just competing. It was the first time I directly faced those who abandoned me. And this time, I wouldn't bow my head. The drive back to Carmel stretched endlessly. The sea breeze blowing, and I felt a profound sense of freedom. No longer afraid of the past. A week later, the suspense reached its peak. The bidding results were announced at the Monterey Conference Center, a modern seaside building with a large hall and a brightly lit stage. I accepted the invitation to attend, though my heart still raced every time I thought about it. It was a major event. The media gathered, cameras flashing incessantly, big businesses from across the West Coast present, and state officials seated in the front row. I wore a simple gray suit, entering the hall with my team, Ella by my side, whispering, "Boss will win." But I wasn't sure. Summit was strong, and with Daniel and Ruth leading, they might pull some tricks. The atmosphere was stifling, murmurs echoing. 2 mountain companies, strange. I sat in the row reserved for candidates, my heart pounding like a drum. Opposite, Daniel and Ruth sat there, he with a stern face, she with careful makeup, but anxious eyes. They avoided looking at me, but I sensed the tension spreading. The ceremony began with a speech from the state governor, praising the eco-urban project as the future of California. Then came the announcement. The chairperson, a middle-aged man with a booming voice, held the microphone. After careful consideration, the winning bidder is. My heart stopped. Mountain Construction Group. The name rang out, and the hall erupted in applause. I stood, bowing slightly, offering my thanks. A mix of pride and a strange, hollow emptiness swelled inside me. Pride, because we'd won this monumental project that would transform Monterey, creating jobs for thousands. Emptiness, because this victory wasn't just a deal. It was an answer. An answer to the past. In the opposite row, Daniel froze. His face drained of life, as if all his vitality had been sucked right out of him. He sat motionless, eyes wide, staring at the stage, his hands gripping the armrests until they turned white. Ruth tried to stay composed, but her hands trembled as she clapped, her gaze darting toward me in a flicker of panic before quickly averting. They hadn't expected it. The son they left behind at 13, in Eureka, had just defeated them on this grand business stage. I saw the shock clearly. Daniel whispered something to his assistant, his face pale, while Ruth bit her lip, her eyes red and swollen. Reporters rushed to take photos, and I faintly heard murmurs. Summit lost. They looked shocked. My heart raced. Would they approach me? Would there be any explanation after all these years? But there wasn't. The ceremony ended quickly. People congratulating me. Handshakes. Pats on the back. Congratulations, Mr. Mountain. I smiled in response, but my eyes still glanced toward them. Daniel and Ruth left hastily, weaving through the crowd without a word. I stood there amidst the applause, but my heart was heavy. The victory was sweet, but also bitter. It stirred memories I thought I'd buried. The media, of course, ate it up. The next morning, local papers published, 2 mountain companies clash, son defeats parents. They dug deep, interviewing former employees, and then the bomb dropped. A former Summit employee who once worked with Daniel revealed the family connection. Daniel and Ruth had a son, but they abandoned the boy at 13 to pursue their careers, he said in an interview with the Monterey Herald. The news spread like wildfire, from local papers to statewide onto social media with the hashtag Mountain Family Drama. Public outrage? It was a firestorm. How could they abandon their own child for money? What kind of parents are they? Articles detailed my story, from that abandoned boy in Eureka to the successful chairman, condemning Daniel and Ruth as betrayers. Reporters called me non-stop. Mr. Elijah, comment on your biological parents. I declined. I'm focused on the project. The public buzzed, and though Daniel and Ruth didn't comment, their silence only fueled the fire. Some Summit partners paused collaborations, emails canceling meetings, calls declining. A few shareholders demanded clarification. We don't want to be involved in a family scandal. Summit Design and Build fell into a defensive position. Their stock plummeted on the small exchange. I followed from afar through the press, my heart pounding. Justice was unfolding. Daniel tried to control the situation. He issued a press release. We respect the committee's decision and congratulate our competitor. Regarding personal matters, that's a private past. But the company's image was clearly damaged. Employees quitting. Other projects delayed. Ruth was devastated. According to rumors, she avoided public appearances while Daniel faced the collapse of the reputation and career he'd built his whole life. Daniel tried to reassure the press in an emergency meeting, but every justification became meaningless. We did what was best at the time, he said, his voice trembling before the microphones. But the crowd jeered. Best for whom? For your son? Ruth didn't appear, but old photos of her circulated, her fake smile beside Daniel, now a symbol of betrayal. I stayed silent, issuing no statements. I understood that justice had done its part. No need for another word from the one once left behind. But in my heart, the pain still lingered. Do they regret it? I sat at my desk, looking at the new project contract, but my mind wandered. This victory brought freedom, but also reopened old wounds. The days following the announcement saw public opinion gradually subside. But for me, it was like an undercurrent still rippling. The press shifted to praising Mountain Construction Group, the ethical company that defeated the giant, and congratulatory calls poured in nonstop. I received them with a polite smile. But every night, lying in bed in my seaside house in Carmel, I'd think about Daniel and Ruth. Their faces in the Sacramento meeting room still haunted me. My father's stunned expression, my mother's averted gaze. Did they truly hurt? I asked myself, listening to the waves crashing outside the window. That victory wasn't revenge. It was the result of effort. But it made me realize that the past had never truly left. It had only hibernated, waiting for a chance to awaken. Our company expanded rapidly. My life now is busy but peaceful. Mornings jogging along the beach. Afternoons in meetings, evenings reading by the fireplace. Ella, my assistant, had become a close friend. You've changed, boss. You seem freer. I smiled. Maybe so, but that freedom is still fragile. I often thought about Daniel and Ruth, following scattered news about Summit. Their company was crumbling. Projects canceled, mass resignations, shareholder lawsuits. One article read, Summit Design and Build, from peak to abyss due to family scandal. My heart tightened each time I read it. Not from glee, but from sadness. They were once my parents, I whispered. Suspense crept in. Would they contact me? Would there be any explanation after all these years of silence? I pushed the thought away, focusing on work, but deep down the wound still bled. Then, late one afternoon, as California's winter brought cold winds and thick fog rolling in from Monterey, the office phone rang. Loud. Ella picked up, then looked at me with this strange, knowing expression. "Boss," she said softly, "Mr. Daniel and Mrs. Ruth Mountain. They're requesting a meeting. They say it's personal." My heart actually skipped, as if squeezed. "Them," I muttered, my hand clenching the pen. Suspense surged. After all this time, after the victory, they came. "Let them in," I said, my voice calm, but my mind was a whirlwind. I stood up, looking out at Monterey Bay through the glass, the waves crashing strongly, heavy gray clouds. What will I say? How will I feel? Memories flooded, the note on the fridge, the empty Eureka house, and the enormous loneliness. But I took a deep breath. I'm not that boy anymore. Daniel and Ruth walked in. They looked older. So much older than at Sacramento. Daniel, nearly 70 now, with snow-white hair, his back slightly hunched, wearing an old, worn coat. Ruth's skin was wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes, a simple dress. They looked tired, their eyes heavy with regret, no longer the confident entrepreneurs. "Elijah," Daniel said first, his voice thin, trembling. They sat opposite me, hands clasped, clinging to each other for support. The office was silent, only the ticking clock, the howling wind outside. My heart raced, suspense building. What are they here for? To apologize or to demand? Daniel cleared his throat, his eyes on the floor. We're here to apologize. Those words. They exploded, slowly, inside my heart. Ruth continued, her voice choked. That year, we left you behind. We thought it was for the best. At the time, we were poor, no future, and we wanted to start over. But it was the biggest mistake of our lives. They recounted their story, their voices trembling. After leaving me in Eureka, they moved south, starting Summit with nothing. Success came, but the guilt grew. Losing reputation and career after the bidding hurts less than losing our own son, Daniel said, his eyes red. We followed you from afar through the press. Stories about Benjamin. But we were afraid. Afraid you wouldn't forgive. Ruth cried. Son, I'm sorry. I've never forgotten you, but the shame was too great. I listened. Silently. No reaction. No blame. Their words cut like knives, but I held it in. Eureka memories revived, eating dry bread, hopeless waiting, the fear of being discovered alone. Rage welled up. Why didn't you come back? Why leave me alone? But I restrained myself. I looked at them. Two old, broken people. And I understood. Some wounds don't need retaliation. Just time to heal. I've heard, I said gently, my voice steady. They looked at me, a flicker of hope in their eyes. But I didn't hug them. I didn't forgive immediately. It wasn't hatred. It was a necessary distance. As they stood to leave, I escorted them to the office door. The wind blew cold, carrying the scent of impending rain. Take care, I said, shaking their hands lightly. They looked at me, eyes glistening. Son, if you could. But I shook my head gently. The past is gone. They left, their figures fading down the hallway. I closed the door, leaning against it. My heart ached. Not from disdain, but for the quiet, solitary way I had chosen to close that chapter of my past. That encounter was like a fleeting wind, carrying their regret, but it didn't change me. I returned to my desk, looked at the contracts, and took a deep breath. I was free. Finally. From then on, Daniel and Ruth withdrew from the business world. They sold Summit cheaply, dissolved the company, and moved to live discreetly in Sacramento, a small house by the river far from the city lights. Scattered news reported they donated their remaining assets to charity, supporting disadvantaged children, building shelters. One article wrote, "The mountain couple seeks redemption through philanthropy." I read it with peace in my heart, not glee, not resentment. They were trying to make amends in their own way. As for me, Elijah, I continued leading mountain construction with renewed vitality. The company grew tremendously. The Monterey project completed early, winning international awards for sustainability. I opened the Benjamin Foundation, supporting orphans and at-risk youth with scholarships, housing, counseling. "This is for kids like I once was," I said at the foundation's launch, my voice emotional. The foundation quickly attracted donations, and I dedicated personal time visiting shelters, telling stories about Uncle Benjamin. For me, forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but stopping the past from controlling the present. I still remembered Eureka, the note, but now it was motivation, not chains. My new life was proof that kindness and integrity are the greatest legacy one can leave. I married Ella, the one who understood me best, and we had children, teaching them about honesty. Every birthday, I'd look at the Carmel Sea, remember Uncle, and smile. Thank you, life. You know, the pain of that past? It's still there. But it doesn't define me anymore. It made me. Now, as I sit here, Elijah Mountain, looking out at the endless Monterey Bay, I see my journey not as a fairy tale, but as a real, raw story, where every single step held a harsh lesson. I wanted to share this not to boast, but to say this: if you're out there, feeling lost, feeling abandoned, feeling like the world has dealt you an unfair hand, remember this. Your past doesn't define you. It's just the first, often painful, brick you use to build your future. I once thought I was just a victim. An abandoned child. But that very pain, that profound loneliness, it taught me how to stand up. How to fight. If I had let the past control me, I'd forever be that boy huddled by the fridge, staring at that hastily written note. Instead, I chose to build. Day by day. Brick by brick. With trembling hands at first, yes. But now, I see life like the crashing waves of the Pacific, relentless, powerful. But you can learn to surf them. You can learn to ride them. You don't have to let them drown you. My journey was full of suspense, from loneliness to betrayal, from bitter confrontation to a fragile, hard-won peace. But it taught me that life is truly worth living when you build it with your heart, with integrity, and with an unwavering belief in yourself. So, I have to ask you, what's your wave? What's the biggest challenge you've faced that tried to define you? I genuinely want to hear your stories in the comments below. Take care, and never stop building your future.